I'd call the order of the regular meeting, no, the special meeting for Monday, September the 12th, 2022. Roll call, we have, is Pete on Zoom right now?
He is not.
Okay, I believe he's supposed to be on Zoom soon, and Councilmember Lopez is missing the whole meeting tonight. Approval of agenda.
I will make a motion to approve agenda as read,
As printed?
as printed.
I'll second.
Good. We have a motion and a second. Roll call?
Councilmember Alvarado,
Yes.
Given,
Yes.
and Proud.
Yes. Public comment. Anyone care to address the council may do so at this time.
Jeff Martin, American Refuse. Honorable Mayor, members of the council, this week we are rolling out all the customers on the west side of Highway 43. Everyone on this side of Highway 43 is going to get a 3-car system this week. So we started our first half today. We'll be going through Friday this week. And so you'll see us tomorrow along the North Shafter corridor, and we'll be working this area. So we rolled out 1,700 customers last month. This month will be roughly around 1,000, and this whole west side will be all completed. So everything's going good so far. Our customers that we have rolled out to, we're having some really good positive results with them. Everybody's doing a fantastic job. Things are looking great. So we look forward to the same effect continuing. So any questions?
Does that follow your current schedule shown on the map? Okay,
Yes.
so you're still following that. Okay,
Yeah, we'll still be on that.
just want to make sure.
Now, this is an accelerated rollout on this month because we had the delay, because when we originally set it up, it was starting in February. And since we didn't get started until July, we accelerate basically 6 months altogether in this week's rollout. So it'll go well.
But which we knew that, but it doesn't differ from the map that we have shown out there. Because we do get the call from the customers, hey, when am I due? When am I due? So
Yeah.
as long as it still follows that, we're good.
Yeah.
It's easy for us to talk
It's
about.
still following, it's still following the map, yeah. This one will be different because it will mostly be alley customers. We'll have a lot of alley customers that are transitioning, so it'll be really exciting.
I haven't had no complaints or anybody calling, and so
That's good.
that's good.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, we have a Shafter tab on our website, so anybody has any questions, you can go to our website, click Shafter. There's a lot of FAQs on it. And if anybody has any questions, ask them just to call our office. We have a lot of people ready to talk to them, so.
Maybe I should ask you at this time too. Do you have an update about people that need assistance?
If they would just reach out to us directly
Mm.
and our customer service representative will take care of them. We'll get them the information they need. We'll come and visit them at their
Good.
home, which is typically what we do. We've been doing a lot of visits with people. It's hard to really express to people of how much we want them to do the right thing, how much we want to come and talk to them face to face and work with them. I took Gabriel for a ride along, and we do, like, whenever we have an issue, we're knocking on their front door. We're trying to get them out there to the can. We're trying to show them what we need and what we expect and have that conversation with them. And it's really helpful. And we have a lot of staff that are ready and able to do that.
Good.
So anyone, if they reach out, we'll go to their house, which we have.
Okay.
We've had several people who have reached out to us that we're taking care of. Just have them give us a call.
Very good. That's good. That's what we needed. Thank you. Anything else? Any questions, comments? Okay. Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to consent calendar. We have 9 items on consent, and I was going to highlight for you. The number 1 is to approve the purchase of 4 2023 Ford police utility vehicles from Jimberg Ford with outfitting, emergency equipment, and graphics for a total of $75,164.02 per vehicle. Number 2, authorize city manager to execute a professional services agreement with Wildan Engineering for code enforcement services in an amount not to exceed $80,000 for fiscal year 2022-2023. Number 3, approve the purchase of an annual cybersecurity service in the amount of $48,054.29 to assist the IT department on safeguarding the organization from active and evolving cyber threats. Number 4, approve the purchase of Samsara network video recorder subscription 2-year renewal in the amount of $23,140.39. Number 5, approve the proposal submitted by R&R Commercial Lawn Maintenance and et cetera for Incorporated for medium maintenance services on Lerdo Highway in the amount of $12,000, authorized Public Works to award the said services. Number 6, authorize the release of construction plans and specifications for Mantle Park Shade Structure Project for formal bid purposes, subject to the final review and approval by the city engineer. Number 7, accept a dedication of an easement for public landscaping and approve a landscape easement agreement with Target Corporation, subject to any non-substantive changes further negotiated by Public Works Director, and authorize the city manager to execute the agreement. Number 8, accept the dedication of easement for street and public utility purposes from Pentecostal Church of God of Shafter, and authorize the city engineer to record the said document. Number 9, find the requested action is exempt from California Environmental Quality Act and approve the construction plans and the specifications for well number 21 site development project located at the wonderful industrial park, and authorize the director to approve and release said plans and specs for formal bid purposes. Were there any comments or questions?
No, ma'am. Make a motion to approve consent calendar as read.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Gibbons, seconded by Councilmember Alvarado to approve consent calendar.
Councilmember Alvarado,
Yes.
Givens,
Yes.
and Prout.
Yes. In our management reports, we have a presentation of a city-owned rail and container ease assessment, maintenance, and capital improvement report.
Certainly, Mayor and Council, this is an item in which staff and our outside consultants will be making the presentation. As you know, by way of background, the city has an asset in the rail yard and container yard here that the city constructed several years back. And we are in a unique position in that we have opportunities now to maximize the utilization of what could be called an underused city asset of great value. One of the first steps we undertook was to conduct an appraisal of the city asset, as well an assessment of its current condition. And also one step further was to look at the city asset in terms of maintenance and what it would require for us to, one, if there's any needed repairs or improvements to be able to use the facility, and or also to gather information in terms of, for budget purposes, of what it's going to take long-term to continue to maintain the facility. So with that, working with the city attorney's office, we retain the services of RL Banks and Associates. They are a nation, I'll let Charles Bank, their president, here shortly give you an overview of who they are as a company, but they are a subject matter expert in the area of rail across the country. They have been for decades, and all of the work they do is strictly related to rail, and similar to what we're looking at not only in assets, but also in the import export of intermodal transportation and such. And so tonight's presentation, they will be making a report to you on the 3 studies that were conducted, as I said, related to appraisal, related to maintenance, and also the current condition of the facility. So let me go ahead and introduce Mr. Charles Banks, who is the president of RL Banks and Associates, and then he will go ahead and introduce his team, provide you a background on the company and what they do, what they specialize in, and then we'll go ahead and get into the reports themselves. It's not an action item, Mayor and Council. So this is a file and receive report. It's informational. It is interactive. So if you have questions as we're going along, as always, feel free to ask the questions and engage the consultants or staff if it's a question for staff as well. So with that, Mr. Banks.
Good evening. My name's Charles Banks. I joined a firm called RL Banks and Associates. It was founded by my father in 1956. I joined him in 1985, and I guess he got tired of working with his wayward son, so he expired to the Great Railroad Roundhouse in the sky in 2005. And ever since then, I've been privileged to run the company he founded. We are exclusively in rail, and what is peculiar about us is that we actually specialize in railroad economics, not railroad design, which is where the big money is. Marisa, if you haven't reached out to Gary, please do so. Okay. Can you put the slides up, Charlie or Maurice, put the slides up for me? And I believe the city council has a slide deck in front of it. Is that right, Gabriel?
Yes, sir. We
Okay.
do.
Thank you. So I will just mostly walk you through the slides. Maurice, can you put them on, look at the slides on this or not? Because we didn't host it. Because I don't have them in front
I'm
of me.
not sure if I can put, oh yeah, here, one second. Let me put these on.
Sorry, folks. In the meantime, let me tell you that it has been let me tell you how you found us. First of all, Best and Krieger, which serves, I think, as the city attorney or something equivalent. They do the same thing for the port of Hueneme, which is Oxnard, California. And we had been retained to do some work for them beginning in the fall of last year. They liked our work, and I think the BB&K folks recommended us to Marco Martinez. And I had a nice, long, detailed chat with Gabriel and Bob Meadows, very substantive. They asked me to produce a scope of services that one of the gentlemen you'll be hearing from in a minute put together. It had 10 tasks. 2 of the 10 tasks were not authorized. That was fine with me. Ultimately, it turned out to be a very good decision. One of the tasks was not needed. That left 7. One of those involved real estate, and you'll hear about that specifically. One of them involved an inspection, which was the foundation for basically all of the other things we will be informed about. One of them was actually making this presentation. So that left us with 4 items on track assets. So, but this is an analysis of both the land and the track assets. Next slide. I'm going to turn off my video only because I have to lean in to read this stuff. I'm an old man. We're a multidisciplinary consulting firm. We provide economics, operations, and engineering counsel solely in the freight and passenger rail space. We've been in business more than 60 years. We represent a very wide group of clients, including transportation clients, communities, government, industrial firms, financial and service institutions, agriculture, and public utilities. We were engaged on June the 27th to what turned out to be 7 specific tasks concerning the approximately 22,000 foot, what we would call industry tracks, which connect Burlington Northern Santa Fe Railway's main line with the wonderful industrial park southeast of Shafter. And basically, I think you want to think of it in terms of when you all look at the track or when your constituents look at it, I'm sure they just see one thing, but we actually see 2 things. We see land and we see the infrastructure, which we call track assets that sit atop the land. And in fact, as one of my colleagues, who I'll introduce in a second, will make clear, there are as many as a dozen separate components that constitute the track assets. So the following slides are an attempt to summarize the methodologies that we employed in conducting the analysis, which results we will share with you in executive session. But before I begin, I want to introduce my colleagues. The first one I think who's going to speak to you is Maurice Torank. He's the handsome one with the deep voice. And Maurice really was the nexus of the track analysis work. And Gary Engelmeyer, who is not a colleague, but a subcontractor with whom I've worked, I would guess, at least 18 times all across the country, including Port Hueneme. He handles the real estate. He's a truly, probably the nation's leading real estate appraiser of railroad rights of way in the country. And last but not least, Charlie Cunningham is perfect also for this project because number one, he used to work for Burlington Northern Santa Fe. And number two, he was very involved in the same kind of transactional analysis that you were about to embark upon. So if there are no questions about our background, I'm ready to move to the next slide. So the land assets, a key issue here, ladies and gentlemen, is what methodology you use to come up with your number. Anybody can come up with the number. The question is on what basis does it, what is the foundation for that number? And we have used something called fair market value when it comes to the land assets, which Mr. Engelmeyer will get into in just a minute. And Gary Engelmeyer is a member of the Appraisal Institute. You may have heard the initials MAI before. And the Institute provides a number of definitions. I'm pretty sure that this is either from them or consistent. I'm sure it's consistent with their definition. Fair market value is an opinion of the dollar value which could be realized from a sale, assuming the seller, is not under distress or duress, and as such has a reasonable period of time to identify and compare various offers for the assets, assuming the sale is made on an as is, where is basis, and as of a certain date. A couple of definitions to share with you that which underpin the methodologies on the track asset side. I will share with you in just a moment, but unlike the land where we just valued it, on the track assets, we both valued the track assets and evaluated the track assets. So I'm going to try to explain the difference. I hope these definitions will help. The valuation methodology we used is replacement cost new less depreciation, which very complicated wording there in deference to the attention deficit society in which we live has been shortened to RCNLD. So if you don't care for that, you can use the longer definition. Replacement cost new less depreciation is an opinion of the dollar value of the material that would be required to replace the physical materials currently installed on the railroad, discounted to reflect the current physical condition of the material. So it's what it would cost to build plus the extent to which it's, or minus the extent to which it's worn out. So that's what we value with respect to the track assets. In terms of the evaluation, we came up with two evaluations. The first one is called cost to cure. And the definition near the bottom of the page is an opinion of the dollar value required to rehabilitate a railroad to Class 1 track safety standards. We'll get into that in a second, as defined by the Federal Railroad Administration. So this is like the equivalent of you buy a car, a used car, and you buy it as is, where is, and it needs a couple $1,000 to get it to operate. This is the equivalent of that. How do you get it operational? And then the second evaluation we performed was of ongoing maintenance which is the dollar value needed to conduct the operating expense and capital expense activities required to maintain a railroad in a steady state condition at Class 1 track safety standards as defined by the FRA. I know I've thrown a lot at you. Hopefully it'll become a little clearer in the ensuing slides. Does anyone have a question before I move on? Good. I'm sorry I put you to sleep already. Next slide, Maurice. This is Gary Engelmeyer. Are you ready to go?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Oh, okay. For some reason, I'm not showing up on the video screen, but
Gary, I can assure you, you've never looked better. Just proceed.
okay. Yeah, I look best when you can't see me again. Well, anyway, yes, I was worked on the right-of-way valuation of the land component on this, and railroad right-of-way land is typically valued based on the adjacent or across the fence land use. In this case, it was all industrial land and of the wonderful industrial park, which is consists of very large, 50 to 100 acre distribution sites, as you know, and that was the basis for conducting our sales search in the region. And we had some pretty good sales, a fairly tight range. Talked to a lot of people there, developers, pretty comfortable with that number. The first part of this was coming up with this across the fence value, and that's the value literally across the fence applied to the quarter. And the second component was to apply a quarter factor to that ATF value, across the fence value. We call it ATF value. And we set out doing the research, and initially we viewed this more of almost like a branch line where you can still see a quarter factor. And a quarter factor, what that is it's when a quarter sells, it's the sell price divided by the across the fence value, the aggregate. If you took a 15-mile line, you'd have multiple land uses, and that across the sell price divided by that across the fence value gives you a quarter factor. And it could be a positive, sometimes a negative. A main line, very profitable line, could be 1.25, 1.5, or much higher. A lower used line, a trail, can be in the low 1 to 1.25 quarter factor range, which would be applied to that across the fence value. But given that this is a rail terminal, not really a large branch line, we had a lot of difficulty finding a true quarter factor. So but in the course of doing the analysis, we did ascertain information through developers and talking to people in the area that due to the connectivity and the rail terminal, that there would be a premium to the land, and that came out to be approximately 15%, and that would equate to a 1.15 quarter factor, which would be very fitting for this for the rail terminal, the Shafter rail terminal. But we really couldn't prove it out through the sales. What I did do was apply that 15%, we call it the connectivity factor, into that across the fence value. So we didn't go forward with a full quarter factor section, but regardless, that 15% or a 1.15 quarter factor is in there. And we only invoice for the across the fence value on that part too. But so in a sense, essentially, we did the across the fence value, which had built into it was a premium for the rail connections and the assemblage. And we didn't do an actual quarter factor, but in effect, it is in there. So and it was pretty straightforward. The sales were pretty tight. They were all very large, distribution oriented, north of LA, in the Inland Empire, and say we were able to get information to justify a 15% premium, which is akin to a 1.15 quarter factor. So that was pretty much the land component. I don't know if
Thank you.
anybody has any
Thank you, Gary.
questions.
I just want to illuminate one thing that Gary said. When he said the across the fence values are applied, what Gary is saying is that he develops a metric, either the price per acre or price per square foot at which properties were developed, and then applies them to the square feet or acreage involved. That's what he means. That's how it's a mathematical buildup, simple math, but it requires a bunch of calculations. So any questions before we move on?
Just a quick comment, Mayor and Council, and the question that may be on your minds is what's the dollar value? For purposes that we'll be having a conversation, this is related to a closed session item number 2 for real estate transactions. As you know, anytime we conduct appraisals involving real estate transactions, while the negotiations are taking place, we don't just share that publicly for obvious reasons. However, in an executive session, we will share that information since it'll be under attorney-client privilege communication.
Thank you.
Okay, well, if everyone's ready, I'll go ahead and move on to the track assets. Overall, the 3 main conclusions that we took away from our analyses were, number 1, our inspector, who's extremely experienced, was very impressed at the overall condition of the track assets, especially for an industry track similar to this. It was very apparent that since their original construction, there was very little to no usage over the years, which resulted in them appearing in a brand new or like new condition as if they were constructed, this year or last year. And because of these 2 factors, it contributed to us determining that there was little to no depreciation on the assets, number 1, which we'll get into in a second. Number 2, required minimal rehabilitation to satisfy the Class 1 track safety standards. And number 3, would require, at least in the near term, over the next 2 decades, very little ongoing maintenance expenditures. So moving on to the replacement cost, new less depreciation, otherwise known as RCNLD. This valuation is completed by the following steps. Number 1 is to assemble an inventory of the assets, and there's various asset types, which I'll mention in a second. Number 2, determine their replacement cost, as if you were to replace them today, and that includes both material and labor costs. Number 3, determine their accumulated depreciation for each asset. So it's not, you can't say, oh, the whole track is depreciated X amount. It's by individual assets. Some assets may be depreciated more than others. That would be expressed as a percentage. And the final step would be subtracting that accumulated depreciation from the total replacement cost, you will arrive at RCNLD. So regarding the condition of the assets, we looked at all the different major asset categories that we found on site, and that includes rail, other track material, otherwise known as OTM, which is the smaller steel components that are present in the track structure. Ties, there were both timber and concrete ties on site, ballast, grading work, and signals. There was a grade crossing, active protection, grade crossing signal. All of these assets were found to be in excellent condition. However, there was one exception, and that is there are these things known as pan draw clips. These are clips that are used to secure the rail to the concrete ties. So there's both timber and concrete ties. Timber ties use normal tie plates. These pan draw clips were used to fasten the rail to the concrete ties. And these clips were determined to be faulty and need a replacement before service resumes on the line. For our major depreciation assignments, rail, the OTM, excluding the pan draw clips, turnouts and concrete ties, we assigned 0% depreciation because of their like new asset state. For timber ties, ballast, grading, the active crossing protection signaling, and the crossing material itself, which runs along the rail at the grade crossing, the concrete material. We put in 5% depreciation to reflect some exposure to elements into installation. And there was also a flange lubricator on site, and we depreciated that by 50% to reflect that it's reached half of its useful life. Any questions on the RC&LD before I move on? All right, thank you. So moving on to cost to cure. As I mentioned earlier, and what Charlie alluded to earlier, is that we determine the cost to cure the industry tracks to Class 1 track safety standards as defined by the FRA. So if you look on the table to the right, the different classes and their associated speed limits are shown for these track safety standards. These are minimum standards to that. So in the industry tracks case, we determine the cost to rehabilitate to Class 1 standard, which is typically the lowest allowable maintenance standards and carries a speed limit of 10 miles an hour for freight traffic. This cost to cure is essentially rehabilitation costs that is repair to various track components. Usually, if you have a lot of rehabilitation costs, that means that the track's been out of service for a long period of time, or hasn't been adequate maintenance on the line. In this case, for the industry tracks, since there was its recent construction and it's been very little to no usage, there wasn't really any rehabilitation that we prescribed except for, as we mentioned earlier, the pan draw clips. Those are going to have to be replaced. So we did prescribe that as needing to an action item needing to get rehabilitated before the line can be satisfy Class 1 standards. And as I said, the remainder of the assets were already deemed sufficient for Class 1. Any questions? Okay. And finally, for the ongoing maintenance, one of the key things I want to get across here is regarding ongoing maintenance is that for most track components, the volume of traffic and the volume of tonnage that traverses over them has a significantly greater impact on your railroad maintenance needs than just a period of time, as in, if 10 years have elapsed or 20 years has elapsed. So the main driver that we're looking at is, what volume is expected to be on the line. And this has a significant impact on the line's maintenance needs. So for instance, if volumes are 0, as they are right now, maintenance needs are 0 because there's no degradation of the structure and there's no volumes going over the line. So in this exercise, we assumed that there would be 1 million gross tons annually. That's about 10,000 carloads. And these maintenance activities reflect that level of traffic. If that level of traffic were to increase substantially, that would probably mean there would be a change in the prescribed maintenance activities that we would recommend. So the two major categories of the maintenance that we looked at were MOW OPEX, or operating expenditures, short for operating expenditures. This is mostly like day-to-day upkeep, spot repair activities, For the industry tracks, we would prescribe just an annual track and signal inspection. It's once a year, and you probably would contract out for a maintenance provider to perform any miscellaneous spot repairs that may come up throughout the course of a year. Because of the size of the industry tracks, this would probably be contracted out maintenance, not something that, depending on who is in charge of maintaining the line, would do. MOW CapEx is the second category. CapEx is short for capital expenditures. This includes scheduled periodic replacement of the assets as they reach their end of their useful life. And this maintenance is capitalized as opposed to the OpEx maintenance, and is larger in scale usually. Given the low volume that we assumed, only 10,000 carloads, there was only 2 activities that we determined would probably be needed over the course of the next 20 years. And that would be, the first activity would be the grade crossing material maintenance. That usually needs to be maintained every 5 years or so. So we would prescribe that activity starting in year 6. And the second is surfacing, which is really like just refreshing the ballast, making sure the track is aligned properly, clearing vegetation, making sure drainage is good. That would be needed probably in year 16, because about every 15 years is when we think that maintenance would need to occur, given the volume and condition of the track. The last points I want to make is, while near-term maintenance needs right now are low due to the fact that it's recent construction and the current excellent condition of the assets, some of the assets like the rail and the ties, they may, depending on volumes, they may reach the end of their useful life, 40, 50, 60 years from now. So if, depending on the horizon we're looking out and depending on the volume that's going over the line, you'll probably would need to see, if you have increased volumes, you probably would have additional maintenance that would need to be completed. This is not to say that you would only need to maintain grade crossing material and servicing forever. This is just for the next 20 years. It would require that minimal maintenance levels. And that concludes my piece on the track assets. Any questions?
No, I don't think so. I think it's a little much, but that's okay.
Okay. Well, I think that concludes our presentation here. Anything to add? Any of my colleagues have anything to add?
I think you covered it all, Maurice.
Okay. Great.
So Mayor and Council, that concludes the presentation. Unless there's questions, there'll be more on this as we engage in the real estate transaction with wonderful industrial park in the future. But for now, this is the first steps in presenting the information, so we have understanding of the value of the asset that we have in terms of the discussions we'll be having. Yeah, I think the takeaway, one of the takeaways among several, is that basically the track is in great shape. It's in
Well, it's not used.
It hasn't been exactly, but the other is that as we begin to use it, obviously, like anything, a car, the more miles you start putting on it, the more you're using it to drive. Obviously, the wear and tear on it's going to speed up. So similarly with our rail asset, the same principle could be applied. That while right now it hasn't been utilized, once we start putting rail on there, obviously the cost associated with maintenance and then future capital replacement is going to go up, right? So that's sort of basically the premise of the reports, that it's in great shape, but once we start utilizing it, those costs will go up.
I'd like to apologize for being late, but on the third page where the track assets, condition summary, and basically everything came back as good, is that inspected by the amount of volume that is going over the tracks or time period, like every year, every other year?
The assessment of the condition is based on what's out there currently. So to be specifically responsive to your question, it's based on any traffic that may have gone over it in the past. It's not a future look. It's not a past look. It's a current condition assessment. Does that answer your question, sir?
Yes, I think that does. And then how about the cost of maintaining a track, something like this, like what we're planning on using, is that pricey too, or I'm just kind of looking at, I know we're going to be wearing stuff out if we start using it, but I mean, exactly how expensive is it to maintain what we have?
I think that's best addressed in the closed session, sir.
Okay.
Did you have any information on switches? I didn't hear you say anything about switches.
So it's a funny thing. In the railroad industry, the engineering department refers to switches as turnouts. The operating department refers to them as switches. So Maurice does have the word turnouts, right, Maurice? I saw it somewhere. Is it on
Yep,
this?
it's in the summary of assets inspected table.
14.
Yeah, there it is, 14. On the lower table, second item.
Okay,
And just to sum up, they were in good condition. And our inspector didn't think they would need to be replaced or otherwise maintained for the next 20 years.
And it's good that you are focused on that, because you only put a turnout or a switch in when you have to change directions. And when you have to change directions, sometimes there's a greater chance of suffering a derailment, which could lead to leakage or fire, or, anything like that. So the fewer turnouts, the better. There's nothing better than tangent track. But this is exactly why we do an inventory, so that our clients can be appraised in hopefully terms that you can relate to, just what you own.
okay. Thank you.
Oh.
Okay, anything else from staff?
Nothing further, Mayor and Council.
Council? Okay, I will call on a motion to go into closed session. And I might ask the attorney, do I need to spell out all the numbers and all that were on here, or just? Okay, first item in the closed session is a conference for labor negotiators. And it's with the city manager and employee organization for the Chapter Police Department. And the number 2 item is a conference for real property negotiators that will take place for the industrial parcels between Burbank Avenue and 7 Standard Road. It will be held with the city manager and negotiating parties, which will be Wonderful Real Estate Development as the chief operating officer, John Gwynn, and the price and terms. Recess.
Prior to the motion, I would like to note that I will be recusing myself from item number 2 under closed session, as I have Wonderful is my employer.
Okay, we need a motion for recess.
Make that motion.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion by Councilmember Alvarado, seconded by Councilmember Espinoza to go to recess, and it is 4:45. All in favor, say aye. Aye, opposed, no. We are in recess. In the closed session.
I'm just confirming they have the Zoom information.
Thanks for the report.
You're welcome. We do have it. We have to sign out consultants, then sign back in. Gary, if you don't have it, reach out to Charlie or Maurice. Okay. Thank you. We'll see you in a minute.
When do we sign back in?
momentarily.
Okay.
This is Gary.
Hey Gary, this is Charlie Cunningham.
Hey, Charlie.
I just forwarded you the next Zoom link in your email.
Okay, from Rachel. Okay, so go ahead, just get on now.
Yep.
Oh, okay.
Everybody's getting situated in a different conference room right now.
Oh, okay.
We'll start for the closed sessions.
Oh, okay. All right.
Lots of hoops.
Yeah, I don't do a lot of this, and I just got a new computer. I don't, for some reason I couldn't see myself, but you could see me on there?
No.
Oh, I don't know what, I mean, I got a camera right on the screen, that was one of the reasons I got this, and it was working earlier, and all the other things I'm doing, but I don't know.
Yeah, and Zoom is a little funky. Trying to find the settings and things. It might be trying to use your laptop or something.
Well, I used to always use it with my phone, so I'm wondering maybe I should just go in on my phone. Oh, I usually use it on my iPhone, and but it said, you know, log in using the camera and your computer's camera and audio and all that. So I don't know. I mean, it was the camera was on. You know, I tested it before I got on and everything. But anyway, well, I'll go ahead and maybe I should just try it on my iPhone.
Okay.
Since you got a new link, I'll try it on there, and maybe that'll do the trick.
Okay, sounds good.
All right. Well, thanks. I just had this all set up. I'm gonna get down again, but okay. Well, thank you.
Sure.
All right. Bye. Jesus. Damn it. I see video.
We're back in session, and at this time, I'd like to call upon our city attorney to give us a wrap up from our closed session.
Thank you, Mayor. As you mentioned earlier tonight, City Council recessed in the closed session. The items are listed on the special meeting agenda, closed session items. There were two. There was a conference with labor negotiators with the agency representative, city manager, and the organization being the Shafter Police Officers Association. All members were present on that one except for Councilmember Lopez, who has an absence tonight. And City Council provided direction to its negotiator, and there's no reportable action. There was also a conference with real property negotiators concerning the properties listed, generally located at rail industrial parcels between Burbank Avenue and 7th Standard Road. City Council heard a presentation from its negotiating team. I should ask that all members were present on that one, except for Councilmember Lopez and Councilmember Gibbons, who had a potential conflict of interest relating to his employment with the wonderful company who's the other negotiating party. City Council provided direction to its negotiating team, and there is no further reportable action.
Very good. Thank you, sir. No further business. I ask for a motion to adjourn.
I'll make the motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second.